So with that, welcome to our panel and webinar on exploring options and requirements of a commercial kitchen in South Dakota. This webinar is made possible through a specialty crop block grant SDSPA received through the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources. So once again, reminder on your microphone, have it muted on the bottom of your screen. Make sure it's muted unless you're wanting to be speaking. We also encourage you to use that chat feature for both introducing yourself and then as we get into questions, throw your questions in the chat and we'll get them answered throughout the session. So my name is Laura Kaler. I work with South Dakota Specialty Producers Association. And one topic that we hear a lot about is interest in starting a commercial kitchen, either for your farm or being able to use one to add value added to your products. So today we're joined by representatives from 3 different commercial kitchens that vary in design and purpose, as well as the Department of Health. Hopefully today you'll walk away with a better idea of how you could get a commercial kitchen started on your farm or in your community. We'll learn about kitchens built by garden owners, as well as a community shared one, and go over different considerations for designing your kitchen. With us today, we have Michelle Grosek and Kiara Poitra of Bear Butte Gardens, Peggy Martin of Cedar Creek Gardens, and Joan Sacrasin, who helped launch the Duel County Community Kitchen. John Osburn from the South Dakota Department of Health is also joining us to provide some direction on the technical requirements of having your kitchen approved. So we'll start with a brief overview from each of our panelists, giving a summary of kind of their perspective, and then we'll delve into some questions and we'll have time at the end for Q&A. We're looking at this being about a 1-hour webinar, but we'll see how Q&A goes. So once again, use the chat to introduce yourself and your connection to community or to commercial kitchens, whether you're interested in starting one or just kind of want some information. And with that, I will let John start off by giving an overview of the commercial kitchen system and process in South Dakota.
All right, thank you, Laura. And I'm going to share my screen here. So I'll pull up my presentation, hopefully. All right. Can you see my beginning slide presentation?
Not yet. Check if there's maybe like a get started button on the bottom.
Okay, hold on here.
Of course, when we had our technology check, it worked perfect. Okay, now
Right.
it's coming up. Yep.
Now it's coming up. Okay, I'm going to start from the beginning. How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, so state licensing of a commercial kitchen. So I'd like to start with when you need a license for your commercial kitchen. And when I say commercial kitchen, basically I'm just saying that not all commercial kitchens are state licensed, but all licensed kitchens are considered commercial. So it kind of depends on what equipment and how closely you meet the regulations if you're considered a commercial kitchen. So as most of the audience knows, I'm sure that there is exemptions from being state licensed. And so due to cottage law, there's several items, food products that you can process and make without any need for a state license. And those would be the whole fruits and vegetables, baked goods, and that includes temperature controlled baked goods now. You can do canning, of course, some frozen, freeze-dried foods and fermented foods. But there's certain things that you cannot do and be considered exempt from licensing as far as food products go. And those would be anytime you're preparing some of those foods like fresh fruits and vegetables when you're cutting them up, so forth, canning of low acid foods, anytime you're juicing or making cider or taking baked products or other prepared food and drinks like casseroles and hot food dishes, then of course you'd need a food license. And then also the exemption also covers how you can sell that fruit or products. So there's no license required if you're selling all the products from your home in the seller's physical presence. You can deliver it to them. You can do it, of course, from your home. You can do it at a farmer's market, a roadside stand, other similar venues, those short venues that operate throughout the year. But you do need a license for anytime you're going indirect sales of your food products, or if you're selling through a retail store, over the internet, if you're shipping products anywhere, so you're not selling it directly in front of that person. If you're going indirect, then you would need a state license for that. So those two conditions, depends on what kind of food it is and how you're selling it. So if you're looking at a commercial licensed kitchen, you do have to meet some minimum requirements. We check the water supply and make sure you're safe. If you're on a private well, we'd have you test that water supply. Same with sewer system. It has to be an approved Department of Ag and Natural Resources approved septic system if you're not on a commercial sewer system. And then we look at the kitchen requirements. Here we look at equipment and sinks. So you need of course, a separate hand sink. You might need a prep sink, and you might need a mop sink, depending on what the operation is and what your menu is and what you're doing. Other minimum requirements might include an exhaust system. If you're if whatever you're preparing needs, if you're using a cooking surface and it's producing a lot of smoke, steam, anything like that, you might need a hood system. And so it kind of depends on what type of equipment that you're going to have in your kitchen, as far as what type of exhaust system that you might need. So we do allow like the home style stoves and a commensurate hood system with that. Whereas if you have commercial type cooking equipment, then you're going to need a commercial type hood system. Dishwashing is another big aspect of a commercial kitchen. You're going to need a 3-compartment sink at a minimum, but we also include commercial dishwashers. If you have a commercial dishwasher, that would meet the requirement. They make under-counter commercial dishwashers as well. The home-style dishwashers are not allowed in a commercial kitchen. Then, of course, we look at floors, walls, ceilings, making sure that the plumbing and electrical codes are up to the requirements of the state. And then we're looking at lighting, storage, refrigeration, pest control, any training that might be necessary. And there's different courses out there. There might be some product evaluations that might need to be done. And of course, we have label recommendations as well, depending on what the product is. So to begin the licensing process, we like to have you submit your plans and layout 30 days prior to construction. We don't want you to construct something and then have to come back and tell you, hey, you might have forgot this part of it and you need this. And then it would, add to your expense, of course, to get that kitchen ready. You're going to want to submit a food service application with the fees and get that notarized, and then submit a food service plan review questionnaire. And that questionnaire basically tells us, it gives us an indication of what type of products you're going to be making out of your kitchen, because there are stipulations with some of the products that, if you're doing a special process, for example, you might need a HACCP plan. So there's other considerations in that. Send that information into the peer. So those 3 things: your layout of your kitchen, your application with your fee, and then a questionnaire. You send those 3 things into the office in peer, and then we'll review that and we'll get that information in front of the advisor in your region. And if you see our map down below, we've got 3 different regions. So somebody in that region will reach out to you to help answer questions and guide you through the licensing process. And then, of course, you would have to pass your pre-operational inspection once you are ready to get licensed. We would go through there at that kitchen and make sure that there's no issues as far as food safety is concerned, to allow you to start operating. And so there's different ways that you can start out. A lot of people do the shared kitchen route. They might have a kitchen that's, for example, a church kitchen that has commercial equipment in the kitchen itself, and then they're just operating out of that kitchen, and it meets the minimum licensing requirements, and you can operate out of there. And multiple people can operate out of the same kitchen. So you could have somebody operating certain days of a week out of a kitchen or certain months of the year out of a kitchen, and somebody else utilizing that space for their purpose at a different time. You can do a kitchen on your residence as long as it meets the licensing requirements. It does need to be separate from your domestic kitchen because we have to inspect it. So we don't want to be, pawing through your private or, your personal food items and everything like that. And another reason is we want to keep it separated from, the pets and the children and the other things that happen in a domestic kitchen. So if you have a separate space in a basement or outbuilding, you could convert that into a commercial kitchen area. And your other option could be maybe like a mobile kitchen where you're separate again, and we do have mobile kitchen requirements. So a lot of people go that route as well, where they operate out of a mobile kitchen. So that's pretty much it for what I had to share. So more information is always found at our website, doh.sd.gov. And of course, the SDSU extension also has some good information to get operated or to start operating a commercial kitchen. So happy to answer any questions after we get through the other presentations here.
Perfect. Of our panelists, any volunteers to go next? Otherwise, Joan, maybe we'll have you go. Yep.
Sure, I can. My name's Joan Sacrasin, and I was the executive director at Duel Area Development in Clear Lake, South Dakota. We actually were one of the first ones to have a commercial kitchen in South Dakota, so that was a feather in our cap. But it was also kind of trying because the state wasn't ready for it, and it came through through the USDA, and we applied for a grant and we received one that was included in. It took us quite a while to find a place that would do it. We had a restaurant and then they went out of business, tried to switch to a golf course, and they were too small. They were kind of one of the two sinks and you put a pill in the water, and we just didn't think it was going to work for a kitchen. But we were able to switch to in Toronto, South Dakota, which I do love about. I've since retired, but their school was willing to do it, and the superintendent, and they were willing to help us set it up, and they had a great little kitchen. At first, it started out, we needed a key to get into the school, and then later on, it was a fob. What was interesting is because we didn't have rules really to go by then. We did have some through SDSU and had some great help there with starting to get things rolling, because they did obviously have the food safety and stuff in place. But for commercial kitchens, it was really we were blazing a trail. And so as we went along, some of the rules kept changing, and that was a little frustrating, but we were able to really get going. We had a producer down there in that part of the county who wanted to make pesto out of her garlic and sell that. And it was not shelf safe. It had to be frozen. And then another one made jelly. And through the course of the couple years, they ended up putting in a brazier in the kitchen, and that worked slick for, if you have an option, that worked really slick for the gal that we had do her jelly. We started out with just a committee of probably 3 or 4 of us, and we also worked with I've been out of it now for a couple years, and they're advocates in Brookings. I can't even think of their name now, but they worked with us to help us get it going. So there was about 4 or 5 of us. We opened it up to the community to come see what it was all about. We had a really good turnout. We had someone make kind of the leather fruit, and we probably ended up with 4 or 5 actually using it. One gal out of Brookings, she ended up, Jenny Schlesinger, she had made salsa, and she'd drive all the way up to Toronto, which isn't very far in East River compared to West River, right, Peggy? But it's she made salsa, and really it was really good for her until they finally opened one in a basement there of a restaurant. So actually, I just, if you get a chance, I guess for a to use like a school that would work with you, especially in the rural areas. I'm originally from Rapid City, so this was all kind of new to me, but they were really willing to work with us in the school board, and we got it going. I have been retired for a couple of years, and I tried to call they have a director that's part-time, and it's gone through some changes recently, so I couldn't find out if they're still operating, but I think I did see them advertise on Facebook. So I think it's still in place that you could use this. But if you ever get a chance, it was on SDSU or public broadcasting for the garden or the life on their PBS channel. I can't think of the name of that either. As you can tell, I'm retired. But anyway, I think that's all I need to say right now. So I'm open to questions later. So whatever.
Thank
I
you very
hope I
much, Joan.
covered it.
And I'll dig in,
Yep.
I'll see if I can find a link as well. I did put a link too in the chat to SDSU Extension has a great article they collaborated with Department of Health on about starting a commercial kitchen. And then I'll see if I
Yeah.
can find the PBS thing that you're referencing, Joan. Next,
thank
I
you.
think we'll have Peggy go and give a brief overview of her commercial kitchen before we delve into some questions.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Peggy Martin with Cedar Creek Gardens. Bud Mankey and I own it together. And we put in a commercial kitchen for a couple different reasons. We had a lot of ugly vegetables that we couldn't sell at farmers markets or in our wholesale. And so we decided to put in a kitchen to be able to process those. We also had a coffee shop and a gym that were wanting us to make salads for them. And as John mentioned, you can't cut a vegetable and sell it at a farmer's market or anywhere without a commercial kitchen and the correct licenses. So again, it was more of a need that we were able to do it. And ours is not fancy. I'll later on show you some more pictures and things, but it really honestly came from garage sales. I mean, the building was secondhand. The cupboards, my son called me, it was a curb alert on the way to get the cupboards. I jumped on Craigslist. So you can tell how long we've had it because I jumped on Craigslist. This guy said $50 for these countertops. I swung by there, and believe it or not, the countertops fit every free cupboard that we got. So it was all just meant to be. But again, ours isn't fancy. We just have a normal, house refrigerator in there, and we have a normal stove. So again, I really enjoy it. It makes it nice. So I don't, even though we don't have to have it for, jams and jellies and pickles, it makes it nice that we don't have to have that mess in the kitchen in the house. So yeah, that's about it.
I'll go through your slides quick to kind of show, like you were saying, your countertops.
Yeah, it's not fancy. You can see we make the jams, the jellies, and right there, different requirements for different uses. So you can see we just have a regular stove with a house hood above it. We don't cook meat. So we were able to not have to do the whole commercial hood thing. On the left is the picture. I use those electric roasters. That's where I make my salsa in. It'll make 36 pints. So I do a mild batch and a hot batch at one time, and it never burns in there, so which is really nice. And then again, it frees my stove up to put the water bath canner on there. Next slide, Laura. Sinks. I have more sinks than I have cupboards, literally. You'll see on the left, that's my prep sink. The middle one is the 3-compartment sink to wash dishes in, and then of course our hand washing sink. So our kitchen is only 15 by 18, but I got a lot of sinks. So these are some useful tools. I won't take a whole lot of time on these, but maybe during the Q&A. That is a steamer juicer on the left. And then in the center is a steamer canner. And I particularly use that one for our jellies because it's just so quick and fast. This picture is a misrepresentation because they have carrots in there. Don't use it for carrots. You know, anything that's over 45 minutes and with a pH of 5.6 or below. So it has to be high acidic foods. And then on the left, we have the Instapot and the Roboku, and that one food processor is a game changer. You know, to do about 50 pounds of cucumbers into bread and butter is less than 8 minutes. I mean, it's just slicker than slick. There's a couple one that we have 2 different types of juicers. One goes on the grinder, and then one is just a commercial grade one.
Great. All right. Thanks for giving us that perspective. And now Bear Butte Gardens, if you want to take over the screen.
Of course, yes, I do. Let me figure out what buttons to press real quick. Okay, well, Kiara's getting the presentation pulled up. I'll just talk a little bit about why we started the commercial kitchen. So we knew we were building a farm stand on our farm, and we're about 5 miles outside of Sturgis. And I wanted to have another option for selling produce and eggs and that sort of thing that wasn't necessarily taking them into town, but also wasn't doing it out of our garage because my husband wanted the garage. And so we started out with wanting to just do a little farm stand, like the kind that you see, the sweet little ones on the side of the road with the door that drops down on the front. And then it morphed from there into having wanting to have some freezers and coolers to hold the meat that we have processed in town and that sort of thing. And eventually we also added on the commercial kitchen side of it because we wanted to be able to do salads to go, very simple things like that, but then be able to open up to the whole variety of value added products. And so we thought, well, if we're going to be building some kind of a kitchen for that, maybe we should just go whole hog into it and be able to do rent it out to other entities that might want to rent it out and do events out here where we're serving out of the kitchen, have a chef come in and serve out onto the patio and that sort of thing. So we ended up doing a full-blown commercial kitchen, as you can see in the photos here. So the picture kind of in the middle there, top is the front of our farm stand. The left side of it is the actual farm stand store. The right side of it is the commercial kitchen. Is that reverse for them?
They're all the commercial kitchen. I didn't put the farm stand in there at all.
No, just in the picture here.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the front of the building with the patio. And then the pictures we have are just from the commercial kitchen side. And it measures, I believe, about 24 by 16.
Yeah.
And it's a nice size space. We can do some classes in there, just small ones, like usually about 6 to 8 people in a class. The other thing, as Peggy said, it was really nice to be able to completely separate out everything we were doing with the farm stand and the kitchen from our home and garage space and all of that, just have it completely separate. And that was a priority to me. And so, yeah, you can kind of see we have the standard equipment that you see in any commercial kitchen, but then we also have a lot of the smaller appliances because not everything we do is on a large scale. So, you know, we have various kinds of canners. We do a lot of canned goods. We have dehydrators. We do a lot of that, and various kinds of food processors and mixers, a warming oven for doing breads. And you can kind of see in the bottom right photo, the ranges in the back. We started out with just basically our oven and stovetop that we had in our house. We got a new one in the house and we brought that one over for the kitchen. And then we purchased a brand new Vulcan commercial type range. And then we have a convection oven also. So some things, a few things we bought new, but most of the stuff we got through auctions and online sales, other businesses closing down. We opened in July of 2020, so we were right in the heat of the COVID shutdowns and all of that. And we were able to get a few, coolers and freezers and that kind of thing because of other places closing, unfortunately, but that worked okay for us. And the stainless steel tabletops, and we're still adding things on and changing things up every year just to make it more efficient, more convenient, just everything just working a little bit smoothly for everyone.
And I just want to say hi, I'm Kiara. I'm the commercial kitchen manager of the kitchen you see in the pictures. I do nothing but make fun things in it. And we also rent out our kitchen to other people, along with hosting various events and doing educational opportunities as well. So I am also in charge of that. So I think right now we have one regular kitchen renter, and then as the season picks up, we're getting more and more interest in the kitchen, just because some people need more space to take their products to farmers markets, or some people are looking to expand their farmers market products into selling to retailers and just different situations like that. So, and then I'm going to go to the next slide, maybe. And these are these pictures are from our last farm to table event dinner that we had last year in September, I believe. Just some nice action shots of things happening in our kitchen. So I think do you have anything else to add, Michelle?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. We look forward to your questions.
All right, so I'm going to start off with a few questions, then I'll open it up to anybody. But if you want to be adding questions in the chat, feel free to do that as well. My first question for the panelists, John, if you have anything to add in from what you've seen in kitchens, that'd be great as well. But if you could go back in time with what you know now, what would you do differently? Whoever's...
I would say I wouldn't do anything differently. I'm very happy with mine, even though it's not fancy. But one thing I would encourage everybody is it's not as hard to get a kitchen certified as you think. So don't overthink it. The first thing is, John had a really nice example and it was all nicely laid out. I took a piece of tablet paper and I wrote sink, cupboard, sink.
Read it.
So it's not as hard as you think. I'd encourage everybody to at least submit a layout. And like I said, ours was just a building that was a lean-to to somebody's house, and we put an extra wall on it and away we went.
Yeah, and I would add that, our code does not require everything in the kitchen to be commercial. Like I know a lot of states have, everything has to be NSF, approved, stainless steel, everything like that. Our code allows, if you want to use a home style refrigerator, as long as it keeps the temperature, we're going to be okay with that. You don't have to go out and buy brand new everything. Everything has to be, high use equipment or anything like that. If it meets the temperature requirements and code requirements, then you can go ahead and get that piece of equipment and use it under our code. So
I like to add, this is Joan. It's probably changed a lot since we were really involved with it and everything, but also don't forget, if you do have a school or something like that in your area, that would also make it work for you. And there might still be, at the time, the grant that we got really allowed us to get quite a bit of equipment. And not that you can't, obviously, I'm a big garage seller too and stuff like Peggy mentioned, but I think some of the things, the schools will have more of that type of thing. And also you can get like dehydrators and different things we have, which we just left them at the school. So I just like to add that. And Peggy was right, don't overthink it.
So for ours at Fairview Gardens, a couple of things that I would do differently would be immediately in the plans have it have it drawn in to do an outdoor separate walk-in cooler and freezer. And, you know, partially why we didn't do that was because we didn't know how big we were going to get, if we would need that space or not. But that right away is something that we needed more of and always do, is more cooler space and more freezer space. And then removing that to outside of the kitchen would actually allow us to temperature control the kitchen better, because those coolers and freezers put off a lot of heat into the room. And we do have the kitchen air conditioned and such, but that would just, you know, give us more space in there for doing other things, more countertop space, and then separate out that heat producing equipment too. Another thing we would do is, we don't really have a good photo of it, but our 3-compartment sink that we do our dishwashing in, we didn't really know how tall we wanted that sink, and that's adjustable. But the electrical lines were, outlets were put right above the top edge of where the sink measured to. So we're kind of stuck with the height of sink that we have now, which for me is a little bit short. And it's, so if you're doing a lot of dishes, because we don't have a dishwasher at this time, we just, a machine dishwasher. So if we're doing a lot of dishes, then, you know, it's just not as comfortable at a shorter sink as it would be at a taller sink. So for us to raise that, we need to have an electrician come in and rewire. And so that's something we'll do at some point in time, but that's just something I would have on my radar next time around. And then the third thing is the bathroom that we have just down the hallway from the kitchen. We would actually put a self-closing door on there. And I know that Charlotte with the Department of Health brought that up with me. And it was like, you know, and in my mind it's kind of like, that's not a big deal. We'll just keep that door shut all the time, or the door to the kitchen shut. And we don't. They tend to be open a lot. So just for bacteria control, we would just go ahead and put a self-closing door on there. Again, that's something very doable. We can do it in the future, but I would suggest that.
Great. Those are the small thoughts that, you don't think about until it's there. What were the first steps that you took for getting your commercial kitchen started? Some of you touched on it already, but anything to add?
I'm going to jump in on this one, because the very first thing that we did was I contacted Charlotte at the very beginning, because I have my work in a commercial kitchen was over, 40 years ago plus. So things have changed a little bit since then, I'm sure. And I just did not know, neither my husband or I are in construction at all. And so I just kind of wanted to know what all the requirements are first. And then we could either create our own plans or take those to a designer and they could incorporate those plans. So I worked really closely with her on where things, sent her at first penciled out drawing of where everything would go. And then she would contact me back and say, I'd suggest moving this here and this here. And that was very helpful. And then we also researched other commercial kitchens a lot, both ones that are online, because there weren't a lot in South Dakota. The only one that I knew of was the Duel County one. And then just going into actual businesses that have commercial kitchens. And that's a little tricky because they might be using them all the time. And you can't really just go wandering through. But I did find a couple local ones to walk through and look at and get their feedback. And then I also went online and looked at plans that were out there. And then there's actually a publication called, let's see, Kiara has it on here, the Shared Kitchen. You want to do it?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen real quick so you guys can see the cover of this, because it is very, it's very, very helpful. And I reference it a lot when we're just kind of at a point where we're like, okay, what is something new that we can do in our kitchen? What's a new way to market the kitchen? And it's very helpful.
And I think this is a free publication.
Yeah.
I believe I got it from Rhoda Burrows with SCSU extension, but I think it's a free publication that you can you can either look at it online or you can have one mailed to you for maybe a shipping fee. So that is very helpful. And then also, yeah, I kind of have that all listed on there. I think everything that I said.
Were there any grant or funding opportunities that you utilized to launch your kitchen?
Well, like I had said, there was at the time. I can't really say now if there still is, but you can contact your USDA and find out, and also probably peer for economic development. If you have an economic development office in your town or area, I would definitely seek them out, because just as of like 2 or 3 years ago, after I retired 2 years ago, there was still a grant. It just had changed its name from an RBEG, rural business, to something else. And so that was an option. So I'm assuming they still have it.
Yeah, we did not. We looked into some grants, and some of them just based on the timeline required for the grant. We kind of wanted to move ahead quicker than that. And so we chose not to go with a grant. Also, we kind of just wanted to get some experience in our kitchen and how it would be used before we might jump out to a larger scale grant that would benefit, you know, other producers and such too. So we just did private funds on ours.
And my last prepared question, and we've got some more coming in. What advice would you give someone to help the approval process go easier? It seems like that's kind of an intimidating step. You have given advice that don't overthink it, but is there anything to help with that form and application process?
I will say again, that is a simple process. And then they come out once a year or twice a year, depending on, you know, what type of business you have, but we're seasonal. So we just have one inspection a year, and Charlotte is wonderful to work with. I mean, she just, you know, well, all of them were at DOH were. If you have a question, they'll answer it, and they're very quick in their response, and they're good at giving suggestions. So it's a pretty simple process. I would say that you know, on top of the commercial kitchen, check into the serve safe. That's going to be another requirement. And South Dakota retailers, they offer the serve safe classes in South Dakota, and you can do them online now too.
Well, and we paid through Dual Area Development to help those, because we were all about starting businesses and entrepreneurs. We'd pay for their serve safe if they were willing to use the kitchen and stuff to help them out, because so many of them have so many startup costs, and that's the biggie for coming from that region. If you're looking for additional funding, sometimes, you know, promote it like this is gonna, you know, if something could take off, like a Paul Newman salad dressing type thing or something, you know, it is something for your area if you can create jobs.
My suggestion on that, with our kitchen, you know, we're rural, so we had to take into consider, and we were doing a restroom, and then we also have a vacation rental on the backside of this building. So we had to take into consideration septic system and all of that to go with the kitchen. And so my suggestion is, you know, first of all, work closely with the Department of Health, but then secondly, work with an engineer who is familiar with your county's rules on septic systems and all of that. Just because each county is a little bit different, and Meade County by Sturgis here has some, they keep, I guess, increasing their requirements. And I think a lot of that is due to all of the rally campgrounds and that sort of thing that are in the county. And some of those were not set up well with adequate septic systems or adequate water, all of that. So I'm really glad that we worked with an engineer that kind of knew the ins and outs of that, knew how to call, who to hook us up with to get all the answers that we needed.
Yeah, and I would add, Laura, that utilize SDSU Extension as a great resource, especially like Curtis Braun. He can help you with product evaluations, product testing, labeling. So he's an awesome resource for the state. And the cost is minimal to get some of those products tested. And it's going to be very valuable if you're starting out to make sure that you're meeting all the safety requirements of that particular product. So that's what I would encourage people to reach out to SDSU Extension.
And I wholeheartedly agree with Peggy and Joan on the serve safe stuff. The sooner you get your food safety training and stuff out of the way, the easier it's going to be for you to kind of understand how a kitchen works and how it flows. Because there's just some things that, you know, you don't put right next to each other just because of the flow of your kitchen and based on what it's going to be used for. And obviously working with the Department of Health is very helpful, but it helps with the conversations if you kind of know when there's telling you these things, like this is why this makes sense. It's just having that extra level of knowledge is very helpful.
How long
Yeah.
does it take to complete the serve safe training?
I did mine all online because I did mine in 2020 or 2020 during COVID, and so I finished it, and I was also working here, so I was able to finish it on my time when I wanted to. But I think I finished it within about a week and a half, but you can definitely finish it within 1 to 2 days.
Or for me, 3 years, because Kiara keeps bugging me to go do it.
Yeah.
So there's the opposite end of the spectrum there.
Yes, there's that too.
And South Dakota retailers, I think it's 3 times a year, they have a 1-day class that you go and take, and you take your test right there.
Yeah.
Yep, the retailers put it on. They do a great job, and they have them scattered throughout the state. Rapid City, Sioux Falls, Pierre, Aberdeen. You know, they get throughout the state. And there's a calendar. If you go to our website doh.sd.gov, you can click on. There's several businesses or agencies that provide that course material. And you know, like I said, you can do it online, or you can take the class in person and do the test all in one day. So different options for depending on what your needs are.
All right, so now moving on to questions that have come in. So keep throwing them in the chat, or you'll have a chance to unmute. One question was cost to rent out your kitchen. For specifics on Bear Butte, Kiara's email is in the chat, and you can send that to her. And if you're also trying to figure out as you're getting started, Kiara is fantastic. She does a fantastic job thinking through what her costs are and how to calculate those things. So I think she'd be somebody that could kind of sit down and have a conversation with you a little bit more in depth. I'll let you expand, but I assume that would be something you'd be willing to do.
Yeah, definitely. If you're looking into how to Michelle just messed with the mouse and the whole thing went crazy. But if you're looking into kind of like, if you're looking into renting and what kind of things will go into having like a starting point for what to charge, there's definitely a lot of things that can go into it, and you can do it as simple or as complicated as you want. I definitely, after a year or 2 of us renting the kitchen, I sat down and redid our prices and realized that we were charging a little too much. So then we decreased our prices to just make it more reasonable for people. But yeah, definitely my email's in the chat, and I can put it in there again if you guys need. Definitely reach out to me and I can help you kind of break it down.
And Joan, do you have anything to add about how you set up pricing?
You know, it was up to each of the individuals and their product that they were producing. And we actually didn't charge to use the kitchen. So we were just in those early stages of, you know, having the first one and kind of as we went along the rules. So we did not charge because our whole purpose was hoping that we could get some businesses off the ground and some jobs for once those businesses got going. So no, we didn't charge.
Thanks.
Yep.
John, the next question is a little bit more for you. If somebody wants to hold cooking classes on their farm, do they need to have a commercial kitchen?
No, that's not required. You know, it's kind of depends on how you're going to be operating. But if you're just going to do like a teaching class for a short period of time, or, you know, one day type of thing, there's no licensing required. And if you don't have a commercial kitchen, but you have this ability to teach a certain, you know, process or how you're doing something, you can do that without a commercial or state license to do that. So.
All right. Thanks, you guys did a fantastic job summarizing and answering things, but I'm sure there's more questions or thoughts that anybody wants to brainstorm. You can also send them anonymously, I believe. Well, I don't know if that's an option, but I won't read your name if you send it directly to me in the chat if you've got a question. Otherwise, just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. While we wait for that, Kiara, did you have any more slides on your PowerPoint with any things that you wanted to show or go over?
So I guess now would be a good time to pull up our blueprints that we had, just so you guys can kind of see the layout of our commercial kitchen. So this is kind of this is what they drew up, and I would say that's pretty accurate. Some stuff, like when it comes to the coolers and freezers, are a little they got moved around a little bit, and like our fire extinguisher here isn't next to the sink, it's kind of over by this door instead. But yeah, and then so we have our 2 stainless steel tables, that's pretty accurate. And then right down in this corner we have a smaller stainless steel table, and then in this corner here we just have like a prep cooler that has shelves on it and things like that. And then, you know, within here, kind of by our cooktops and ovens and stuff, we obviously have the hood on the top, and then we have like our proofing oven and our convection oven. And then here's the prep sink, our 3 compartment sink, and then our hand washing sink. And then just like right in this hallway, you can see the sink and the toilet is the bathroom. So that's kind of where that self-closing door comes in play, because there's a vent right up there, and so it just blows bacteria. So we just try our best to keep everything closed all the time. But so was this the final job, would you say, Michelle?
Yep, it looks like it is.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
And a
There's
question in the chat was, who drew up the plans?
He's in Sturgis, his name is Pat Sigler, Sigler. Maybe put that in the chat box.
Yeah. Let me see here.
And
Is it
Pat P-A-T Sigler, Sigler. And I can't think of his business name right now, but if you search on him, that would pop up. And he had done a couple other commercial kitchens before us, so that part was pretty convenient for him to do.
I have a question for John, just out of curiosity. What do they charge now? At the time, it was kind of exorbitant, I thought, from our angle, trying to get businesses started, and since it was an incubator. But what do they charge now for a license for a year, you know, to open up your kitchen?
Sure.
Or to use it, I guess.
Yeah, so licenses are dependent upon seating. So most of your guys's processing kitchens aren't going to have seating. So I believe it's $140 for the year. And then there's a $100 initial licensing fee. So that first year it's going to cost $240 to get your kitchen licensed. And then every year after that, every year that you renew, it would go back down to the $140, because the $100 initial licensing fee covers our review process and all of our site visits and everything like that. So, and our fees haven't changed for about 15 years now. So they're still relatively low compared to the rest of the country as far as licensing goes.
Okay. Now, if you don't have seating, so if it's like, say, it's what, 0 to 1, 0 to 2, whatever, is it still 140?
Yeah, I think that's the lowest amount. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
And then
Thank you.
actually a mobile unit is even cheaper. I think it's 188 for the initial licensing fee year, and then it's $88 after that every year. So
Okay, all right. Thank you, John.
Other questions? If there's nothing coming to mind right now, I encourage the presenters, if you'd like to put your email in the chat. If you're comfortable with people reaching out to discuss things with you further. Any final thoughts from any of the panelists?
Well, one gal there, I think Jolene had asked about who can get a surge safe. And as far as I know, and I doubt it's changed, anybody can get it. You know, and if you're thinking of working with food or something in the future or something, it'd probably be a good thing just to have. And, but anyone can get it as far as I know. At least so that's the way it was before.
Another good question that just came in, are there any particular insurance requirements to consider?
We have it under our normal farm policy, our general liability, 2 million.
Yeah,
That was-
ours is probably the questions were more like, oh, you have people coming out in groups, are you doing farm tours as well, and that kind of thing. So what else were the people doing on the farm when they're here to get food or whatever? So yeah, ours is also kind of just a side policy along with our farm stuff.
When we were, you know, oh my gosh, that just flew right out of my mind. Oh, insurance. You know, when I spoke in Aberdeen one time at their Million Cups, that was a big concern for people, is the insurance, and you know that people didn't get started because of it. And it sounds like it's working well for you guys under, like Peggy said, or general insurance and stuff. And our school, actually, it was just under the school system when, you know, and we had no problems, but maybe it could have been a problem one day, but we were pretty fortunate in that. So.
yeah, and the state doesn't verify that you have insurance or anything like that. So it's not a requirement that, you know, obviously we would recommend it, that you have proper adequate insurance. But it's nothing that we check on to verify that you've got, you know, your business covered or anything like that. So.
Just out of curiosity, John, hasn't there been any cases in the state or anything where it's kind of come back on them for bad food or anything like that through a commercial kitchen?
Well, yeah, we deal with outbreaks every year that a lot of times, you know, the public doesn't really hear about it, but they're out there and they happen and they're maybe in the background, but and if you're in a community, you might hear of it. But we probably deal with, I'd say, a handful of outbreaks every year that are touched through the commercial kitchen that we're dealing with. A lot of times we can't pinpoint it exactly to a certain kitchen. But yeah, you make a good point. If you are, you know, renting or leasing your space out, your shared kitchen space out, it might be a good idea to have that person that you're renting it to obtain their own license so it doesn't affect your license. Just as, you know, like Joan was saying, there might be insurance implications with something like that. So.
Michelle, is that something you do?
Yeah, so we set up our farm stand and kitchen as a separate business entity, so it's an LLC. So it's completely separate from our farm, and it is a separate insurance policy, but it's with the same company. So that if there is something that happens and somebody comes back and sues, you know, the kitchen, the LLC, then they don't have access to our home and our farm as well.
And then if people use your kitchen, do they need to have their own insurance?
Yes, yep, yep, we do that, just kind of like a farmer's market usually wants you to have sort of similar, but it's different,
Yeah.
but you know, vendor insurance and that, but yeah, they need to have their own basic policy.
Are there questions?
Not so much a question, but I do know from a couple of small communities in their little stores, they'll have jellies and stuff that were made in a home without a kitchen. And there were reports way back when that, you know, one particular had cats and everything all over the place. And I never did know whether to turn them in or what. I kind of hated to be a tattletale, but I kind of thought when everybody else is trying to go through the right channels and they just would make it in their home and sell it in the stores. But
Yeah, which of course you're not supposed to do, but we know it does happen out there. And you know, usually that we don't have a fining capability or anything like that, but we would reach out to that processor and let them know what the requirements are, and you know, do our best to help them operate, you know, in the legal according to the law, and get them licensed appropriately. So.
Other thoughts? I guess another thing I'd just like to note or point out that if anybody on this call has a strong interest in starting like a community commercial kitchen, there's a group that I'm meeting with that's kind of discussing the concept along that I-90 route of setting up a commercial kitchen that could be used by multiple producers to add that value added step. So I'll put my email in the chat if that's something that you're interested in being involved in discussions with. Let me know. Otherwise, thanks Peggy, Joan, John, Michelle, Kiara, and Peggy for jumping on today and teaching us from your own experiences. Thanks to everyone who attended and brought questions as well. And I'd also like to thank South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources for the block grant that allowed us to put this together today. The recording will be available for anyone to view in a few days. If you go to our YouTube channel, SD Specialty Producers Association, you can subscribe, and that way you'll get alerts to this and any other recording when they become available. And I think I'll also be sending it out to anyone who registered for this. So a couple different ways to get this information if you want to listen to it again and pull out some new pieces. With that, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.